Alright, let's do this.
Think Microsoft versus Apple, Coke versus Pepsi, or the eternal Burger King versus McDonald's battle. Now imagine that, but with conference lanyards, standards committees, and a much cooler sense of purpose. This episode? Well, it's about two rival public safety giants finally finding common ground. That's coming up next on TiPS, Today in Public Safety.
Welcome to TiPS, Today in Public Safety, your go-to podcast for today's breaking stories and public safety news. Here's your host, Fletch, with today's tips.
Welcome to TiPS, Today in Public Safety. This is Fletch. I'm a certified NENA ENP, and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday each week, I bring you the latest news and information about public safety and next-generation 911 services and solutions. Today we're going to be talking about the beautifully awkward, deeply important, and surprisingly refreshing collaboration between NENA and APCO, two organizations that have been defining emergency communications for decades. So let's get real for a second. Every industry has its legendary rivalries. Microsoft versus Apple, who's got the better OS? McDonald's versus Burger King, flame grilled or flat top? And where's the beef? Coke versus Pepsi? Well, that was the original sip war. One of my favorites, the Mets versus the Yankees. That actually has me fighting with my mother for Subway bragging rights. And the legendary Bears versus Packers with over 200 games of frosty Midwestern tension. Ah yeah, and then there's public safety. Specifically, NENA versus APCO. Now, if you've been around the block in this field, you felt it. Not really animosity, but an undeniable vibe. Two strong organizations with strong missions and very loyal members. And a slightly competitive swagger. We've all seen the silent judging of conference booths, the ours versus theirs mentality in panel lineups, and yes, the occasional raised eyebrow over whose standard gets adopted first. But here's the thing. 2025 just turned that dynamic on its head. Melanie Jones, ENP, and NENA's president, along with Steve Martini, ENP, APCO president, did something big. They came together on a critically important standard around call taker wellness, a topic too vital for turf wars. At the national conference, there was a palpable shift, a mutual respect, genuine recognition, and a whole lot less of the Cold War awkwardness we've all come to expect. I'm not proud of it, but it was there. And then there was possibly the biggest plot twist of all, the surprise retirement party for NENA CEO Brian Fotz. Not only did senior leadership from both organizations show up, but the speeches, heartfelt, unified. And if you didn't know better, you'd think these two organizations had always been co-hosting barbecues. Now look, personally I've been a member of both organizations over the last 2.5 decades. But eventually the demands of my NENA Institute board position, and now my role on the national board as Northeast Regional Director, required too much focus. And my APCO membership quietly expired. But you know what? That today I regret. Because this artificial divide, it's not real. It's perception and not a policy. There's no velvet rope separating the folks at APCO and NENA, just habits and assumptions. So here's what I'm doing about it. This year at the APCO conference in Baltimore, the first thing I'm doing is renewing my membership, not out of nostalgia, but to make a point. 3 words: we're better together. Also, let's be honest, being on the board of NENA and an APCO member, this gives me prime front row spitball access to President Martini during his final address. Hey, it is what it is, right? Hey look, I'm genuinely excited to see the synergy that's forming between NENA's new CEO John Provenzano and APCO's CEO Mel Mayer. It was clear firsthand in Long Beach, and what I saw was two leaders who understand that collaboration isn't optional. It's actually mission critical. Look, in the end, we all want the same thing: a stronger, safer, and smarter public safety ecosystem. And when we stop dividing ourselves by color-coded conference badges, we just might get there a whole lot faster. That wraps up this episode of TiPS, Today in Public Safety. I hope that this podcast was educational for you and you learned something new. If you liked what you heard, please drop a like and be sure to tell your friends. And don't forget to leave a comment and let me know. If you have any questions or want to suggest a topic of your own, just reach out to me on social media at Fletch911. Who knows, maybe your idea will be the topic of a future podcast. Thanks so much for listening, and if you're in public safety, thanks for what you do every single day. This is Fletch. We'll catch you next time. Take care.
You've been listening to TiPS, Today in Public Safety, your go-to podcast for today's breaking stories and public safety news. Hosted by Fletch and available every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on 911tips.com. That's 911tips.com. Be sure to like and subscribe, and remember to join us each week for the latest on NG 911. I am Spider Harrison, the official 911 voiceover dude. Catch me on Sirius XM on various channels, including 90s on 9, the 10 spot, and on the Weekend Countdown on Hits 1. Or don't regret it for the rest of your life. Either way, I'm good.